We're back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey. You're tuning into our Leaders and Legends segment. And joining us by phone today, we have Aron Susman, CFO and co-founder of The Square Foot. Welcome to the show, Aron.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the squarefoot.com is?
Sure. The Square Foot is an online marketplace that helps businesses find their homes. We found that finding and securing office space was a huge pain for many small businesses, and there wasn't a lot of transparency in the industry. We wanted to bring that to the tenants. So we want them to be able to search and find availabilities and pricings online, just like they would when looking for a car or an apartment.
So is it just office space, or can people get industrial space too?
We list all types of space. However, it turns out for the first couple years of our business, about 90% of people on our site are searching for office space.
Gotcha. Okay, so how was the idea born, and what problem is it solving?
So the idea was born about 4 years ago when I was working for a healthcare technology startup in California. There was about 6 of us, and I needed office space. I figured I could get on Zillow or Trulia for office space and help find what we needed. I learned very quickly that did not exist, and I did not really understand why. I called my 2 future co-founders who are in the commercial real estate industry and told them my problem and asked them why I couldn't find that online. They both gave me the same verbatim answer, which was pretty confusing, but figured that I trusted them and they knew the industry, so it was probably right. At that point, we all decided that it didn't make a lot of sense that small businesses had a hard time finding office space, and we should try to attack that problem if it ever came to pass. And a few years later, we were all in a position where we were ready to try to take on our own entrepreneurial venture, and so we decided to attack the office space leasing market.
Wow, that's pretty cool. By the way, what states is this in right now?
So we are mainly focused in New York. We had started the business in Texas initially, but actually decided to move to New York because New York is sort of the mecca for commercial real estate in the U.S., and it has a really strong tech community. So we figured if we were going to start a commercial real estate tech company, that was the place to be.
Gotcha. So how was the initial business plan developed, and has it gone according to plan since you developed it?
It did not go according to plan. So when we originally got started, we wanted to be Zillow or Trulia for office space, meaning all we wanted to do was publish the listings and aggregate them for prospective tenants. However, it turns out that did not work in our industry for a couple reasons. One is that in residential, there's something called the MLS, where all listings are available for everyone to see. So any tech company can just plug into those listings and display them however they want to build the best search tool. And then they built advertising platforms around them. So when you're on Zillow or you're on Trulia, you're seeing a lot of ads for furniture, contractors, title companies, etc. We tried that at first, thinking that was our business model, and it turned out that the eyeballs that looking for an apartment or a home just weren't there for office space, which in retrospect makes sense because the amount of people, everyone looks for a home or an apartment at some point in their life, but only certain people, decision makers at businesses, are actually looking for office space. So because the eyeballs weren't there and the impressions weren't there, we had to learn very quickly that this advertising model would not work. What ended up happening was tenants would end up inquiring on the site saying, hey, I'm interested in this building, but the landlord's not responding to me. Can you help me close this transaction? Since one of my co-founders, Justin, was a broker in his previous life, he already had his license, and he said, sure. So he helped a couple tenants get into their space. The landlords paid us the typical fee they pay brokers, and we thought, hey, why don't we just become a tech-enabled brokerage, and that's how we'll make money. And that's how the business has evolved, and that process from the initial business plan to figuring out what we were actually doing took about a year. And then after that year, we really started to scale the business and learn what it took to actually build not only an inbound tech company, but also a brokerage.
Totally different. And it doesn't seem like anybody's doing it in your space. Do you even have competition?
We don't have competition in our space. I think that's for a couple reasons. One is that, generally entrepreneurship starts when someone is confronted with a problem. So they're buying eyeglasses and the experience isn't very good, and they decide to start a direct-to-consumer eyeglass company. In office space, you find that most small businesses are the ones who encounter the challenge, but they're already running a small business. So it's a lot harder for them to decide to drop what they're doing, which conceivably, if they're getting office space, is probably working at some level, and dropping that for this idea. So I think that a lot of people aren't exposed to the problem, so that has led to not a lot of people trying to attack the problem. I think the second reason is that it is a business that is a huge market, but because you have to move geographically from market to market, it doesn't scale overnight. In these days, at least in the past 3 or 4 years with venture capital money in Silicon Valley, people are all trying to start companies that can grow huge overnight. And this is a business that can grow very quickly and can grow very well, but won't grow scale to a $100 million business in a year or two. So you haven't seen some of the players play in this market either.
Interesting. So you are an actual brokerage as well?
Correct. We are a licensed brokerage as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about finding the perfect office. Why is office space so important to like building a great company culture?
So most people who've worked at a company have worked in some type of office, and it really makes a big difference. You're spending, I think, 80% of your non-waking hours at that office space. So for your employees and your culture, it really matters. No one wants to come into a dark, dingy office or an office that's not in a good area or an office that takes a really, really far commute. So as you build and scale a business, your office space really matters for culture. As you're trying to recruit talent, one of the things we learned building this business, that ideas are kind of a dime a dozen. What really separates you is execution, and usually the way you execute is by having an amazing team. The way you recruit an amazing team, I think in part has to do with your office space. Really talented, amazing people who are passionate and care about what you're doing. You know, if you come into an office that looks sort of cheap and dingy and not really taking care of their employees, I think, you know, it just doesn't look great, and they end up going to other companies. So we found that, you know, really great companies that really promote great culture tend to recruit the best, most talented people, and those people want to work in a place where they feel like they're not just at work, but at a place they actually enjoy. So we think that the costs that go along with building a place that's comfortable, that has snacks and food and open areas, you know, you're going to get those dividends, because if an employee doesn't mind hanging out at work with his coworkers for extra 30 minutes or doesn't mind being at work for a little bit longer, you're going to see employees start to bond. You're going to see them start to care about each other. You're going to start to see a team really form. And if you don't have a office space that's conducive to letting that happen organically, you're just not going to get that. And you know, it's a huge difference between a winning and a losing company is, you know, how your employees care about you and how passionate they are about what they're doing.
And when you say having food, are you talking about like cafeterias or just like stock in the break room?
No, we're just talking about stock in the break room. You know, we have a lot of the companies we help will put in soda fountains or, you know, have a snack room, not like a full cafeteria. You know, most of the businesses we help are 50 to 100 people, so cafeteria is probably overkill. But, you know, most of the businesses we help, they do have a TV, they do have a break room, some of them have a video game room. And while it's not traditional, you know, that's not how businesses were 20, 30 years ago, we've found that, at least in our business, that, you know, if an employee feels like for 15 or 20 minutes they want to clear their head and go into a break room with some food and hang out, see what's on SportsCenter for 15 minutes in the middle of the day, we've actually found that that turns them to be better employees who feel like, you know, they want to work hard for you, and it gives them some headspace to really clear their head and work harder. So we found that, you know, really great office space that feels comfortable to people and it's a place that people, you know, want to be, really can make or break the difference in terms of how you recruit employees. And especially in New York these days, and in Boston too, in any market, Silicon Valley or any hot market where the war for talent is hard, you know, that can be a make or break on whether you're able to acquire that talent.
One thing that I think is interesting, I don't know about the New York market, but in the Boston marketplace, so Bob and I are very involved in the real estate industry, and when you say to me commercial real estate agent, in my head I see a 70-year-old man who has been doing commercial real estate for 50 years. Like, that's what the commercial real estate brokerage, that's what they look like in our market. But this is a high-tech company. Like, who are you recruiting? Are the members of your brokerage team people that have been in the business, or are you taking like millennials and saying, we've got an awesome tech platform, now we can bring you the business, and developing your own talent?
It's a really interesting question. And, you know, we're seeing this too a little bit in Boston as well, just because obviously the biotech space is very hot, and there's a lot of actual big venture capital firms in Boston as well. But people we hire generally have 3 to 4 years experience. So they've been in the industry for a little bit, but not long enough to learn the bad habits of that 70-year-old broker who's been doing the same thing for their entire career. So we do skew towards the millennial. However, we do like to hire people who have, you know, spent at least 2 or 3 years in a big brokerage learning, you know, what how the industry works. Two of our co-founders came from big brokerages, so they have that experience themselves.
Yep.
But we found is because our platform actually does the prospecting, the reason brokers generally kind of have that sleazy vibe sometimes is because of two things. They're eating what they kill. They're totally commission-driven. So they're prospecting for deals and cold calling, and they make their money based on how big of a space that you lease or buy. So what we did is by removing the prospecting component and letting the site do that, brokers don't feel the need to have to be constantly, cold calling all the time, and they're out there really just touring and closing businesses. So they're actually brokers that actually just enjoy being out in the market, meeting people, showing them space. And because our brokers are salary bonus based, we give our bonuses based on the customer experience, not based on the size of office they leased. So our brokers don't have a stake in how big of an office they lease, which I think gives customers a totally different experience because they now have brokers that we like to say that our brokers are someone you'd actually have a beer with or go have a cocktail with. Where traditionally, in the regular industry, your broker is someone that you go out with because you have to, but you don't really enjoy that touring process. So we do skew towards the younger broker, and we found that because they don't have to prospect, you don't get that same sleazy vibe, which opens up, the people that are willing to be in this business are very different, and so you get a totally different experience.
So I understand the lead generation part of it. Once you have you have your own network of business, so it's kind of like an MLS, multiple listing service for commercial real estate. But who's prospecting for the listings?
So we don't actually, we aggregate inventory from the landlords. So what landlords have told us over time is, hey guys, what you're doing is great. It doesn't really affect us, but as long as you're aggregating demand and bringing us tenants into our space, we're happy to give you our inventory. So we actually aggregate all of our supply from the landlords out there, some of the big institutional ones, the mom and pops, who aggregate our database. And then when we're actually out there sourcing clients, what's really cool about our product tour book is as broker clients are touring, they're taking photos, they're writing down even richer descriptions about the space, taking videos. All that's going into our database, which is making our data even better than our competitors. So we like to call that the virtuous cycle, but we're able to take this data that we're already getting from the landlords, and as we're out there touring and we're using our technology, we're collecting more and more tidbits about those spaces. And then what turns out to be great for it is the more information we have about the space, the system can then actually go and say, hey, this tenant is looking for this very specific kind of needle in the haystack. It has to have wood floors, it has to have a kitchen, it has to have X, Y, Z. And as our data is getting better and spaces are getting tagged with those requirements, every 2 weeks the client can just email a list of all the spaces that have come up that meet their requirements, which is great for the tenant because they're getting out in front of the market and seeing the spaces that are available for them. And it automates the broker's day-to-day, which makes us more efficient as a business, and we can work these smaller deals more profitably, which makes it very tough for the CBRE, Jones Lang LaSalle's of the world.
Interesting. So when Uber came about, the taxi industry hated Uber. They still hate Uber. Does the brokerage community support you?
It depends on the day. It depends on who you are. The listing side of the brokerage community, the people representing the spaces, they like us because we're bringing them lots of deals, and they're really happy about that. The tenant brokerage business, thinks that we're interesting. We don't really encroach on a ton of their business quite yet, so it's not something where they pay too much attention to what we do. The way the business was born was that 75% of all commercial leases by volume are under 10,000 square feet, but 75% of all the brokerage dollars earned right now are for above 10,000 square feet. So because these big brokerages are cold calling and spending 50-60% of their time prospecting for deals, they're really only searching for the 10,000 square foot and higher deals. But because all of our leads are coming inbound and because we've made the process more efficient for our brokers, our bread and butter is the 5,000 to 10,000 square foot deals. So we really play in a little bit different of a market than they do. Although with that said, we've had some clients that have started at 5,000 square feet, and as they've grown, the biggest deal we've done to date is 35,000 square feet. So, the brokerage community kind of knows who we are, especially over the past few years. For a very long time, commercial real estate tech would pop up. It would go away very quickly because it is a very old, entrenched industry that is very hard to penetrate. So I think, we're looked at as something that's potentially interesting, but I don't think brokerages see us as a potential threat quite yet because we don't really play quite in their market.
At what point do you move out of, or not move out of, but add additional territories and move into other states?
I think that will happen in Q1 of next year. We're really trying to get down the rinse, wash, repeat process to what we're doing. We are sort of taking this traditional model, which is independent contractors who cold call for business, and really flipping it to what we would call a SaaS software model, where inbound leads are coming in, they're being qualified, and they're being handed off to a broker. We make sure, and we're, as a tech company, we're constantly testing everything we do, and that's from the copy on the website to the color of the buttons to the emails we're sending out to how the handoff process takes place. So we're constantly iterating on that, making sure that our conversion rates are always improving and getting better at paid advertising. Right now, about 80% of our business comes through organic search. So when we're to search, at least in New York office space or Flatiron area office space, we show up very, very high. But we're just starting to test now paid acquisition channels, meaning, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. There's a lot of places that you can sort of very target advertising to generate more business, and we're getting better at that. And our goal is to continue to iterate and get better at that. And at the end of September, we feel like we'll have done everything we could to learn, and we'll be in a place where we'll take all of those learnings and then apply them to 2 or 3 new markets. So what those markets are yet, we haven't really figured out, but we will take kind of the tech and marketing platforms that exist in New York and then add layers of brokers on in new markets. And I think what we will do is, we'll test a couple markets. It could be a market like Boston and then a market like Charlotte. Obviously, Boston has more expensive real estate and is a bigger market than Charlotte, but the cost to acquire a customer in Charlotte may be cheaper, so we actually might have better margins in these smaller kind of under-brokered markets. So the goal is in Q1 of 2017 to roll out to 2 or 3 more markets and test which ones make the most sense as we start to think about a national expansion.
Awesome.
That's great. We're actually running out of time. That's going to do it for this edition of Get Real. Join us again next weekend. And Aron, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, guys.